So I'm going to show you a little bit about, how I've been doing what I'm doing, because I think it'll be interesting and also informative and potentially can show what the future holds and where, I think it's all kind of going to be headed. Go all the way back to last April when we first started really, digging in. Everybody that was on the team back then had been, toying around with different AI and but it wasn't really good, yet. GBT was the thing, and it was okay, but it wasn't good yet. The deal with Cursor coming along is that they had built the first kind of really good harness. It really took until about September before we started really seeing some results. There was other stuff that was happening on the examiners that Renat was doing using Cursor, but the one that was really of use was the one where Jake went in and did the file manager. Then by the time we got into the December timeframe, the project had run completely out of money. I had no choice. I had to let the team go. I just kind of started digging into our code base and playing around with Claude. And by that time, I'd run Claude through the entire code base. This is our GitLab setup. And the deal is that the reason why I want to show you this is because there's literally about 80 repos here, and 15 to 20 of them are archived and no longer, show. And then of the remaining, 50 or 60, we use probably 10 to 15 of them, all the time. And then there's a bunch of them that are just sort of supportive. And then, there's some that are just hanging out that we don't really talk to very much, if at all, anymore. They're just supportive repos. And what a repo is, are all the files, right? These are all the folders and files and everything that go into making up a code base. This is what I was all focused on for, that whole period, was really digging in and understanding this. If you really want to get good at AI, this is something you should learn, because the more you know about Git, the better off you're going to do with AI. What this actually is, the easiest way to sort of understand Git, it's kind of like a blockchain in some ways, right? But what it is it's a thing for people to have a shared code base where multiple people can work on the code base at the same time, and everybody can provide their changes into the code base, and there not be collisions and problems and challenges from a bunch of people working on the same code all at the same time. I really kind of got, into it about mid-January and started saying, well, look, I'm going to rebuild the console, invoicing, all that sort of stuff. And I just as an exercise to kind of prove to myself that I could. And I did. And, I started getting a bunch of things that I had been wanting forever and not able to get. And then all of a sudden it just dawned on me, oh, this can work. I mean, this really can work. Across the planet, big companies and small companies and medium-sized companies are all trying to inculcate it into their workflows. And by and large, they're failing, right? They're mostly failing. In my case, I didn't have any choice, right? I had to do it, and I had to get it working correctly. And the reminders that I'm having right now of 1997, 1998 are really, really high, because there was a lot of the same kind of stuff in building, out web properties back in those early days. The entire team over the course of the last 6, 7 years busted out about 4,000 commits. The entire team, and the team had ballooned up at one point to 11 people. It dropped down to the last, there was 4 people. The entire team produced about 4,500 commits. The robots, since December, have submitted 6,000 some commits. So whenever anybody asks, can this work? The answer is a resounding yes. Have things gone differently than what I envisioned back in 2017? The answer is no. This is a chart that I showed. If you look between here and 2025, there really isn't much going on. But then all of a sudden you start to see here, and the forecast was in 2025, we were going to start seeing a jump. And of course, between 2025 and 2030, that jump gets significant. Amazon actually did prevail in setting the agenda on how cloud storage was going to work with the S3 protocol. And so a lot of people have come along trying to set their own protocols or build their own things. But AWS already won that game. They made it open source. They made it, open license. So, it is the deal. And so as soon as I was able to get in here and start really cranking on it and start, working on the actual product itself, first thing I did was come in and throw out the Minio thing and start scoping and specing out a full S3 gateway. CEPH is this big open source cloud product that's out there, just built for distributed. And the deal is they built this whole set of compatibility tests. Well, there's like 1,100 tests. And of the 1,100 tests, about 200 of them are things that AWS doesn't even pass because they're deprecated, they're no longer in play anymore, or whatever. So you start right off the bat carving out the things that AWS doesn't pass. You then carve out another, swath, which are things that only Ceph, built into their cloud that you don't care about, that don't matter to your customers. So you cut those out. And you wind up with a number of tests, that are somewhere in the neighborhood of about 600 to 750 tests that make sense to pass for really solid compatibility. The next step on this is performance. And so we'll get to that in a minute. So this will give me the lead into the first part of the thing that I want to cover, which is we are finally going to make D2X the same as SPF. What we have to do is we have to follow all the things that have happened to date, as well as the stuff that, we think is going to transpire over the next, year under the Clarity Act, the Genius Act, the various kinds of regulatory that are happening. And so, the staking thing that we built, that has to go away. Staking itself is fine, but only if it's, in aid of actual utility of the project. And so right now, the first way that that'll stop is that the bonus D2X will stop flowing into that. And then in about another week, once I finish these sprints, the staking itself will stop. Everybody's stake will become free and able to be pulled out. And the D2X token will become a one-to-one swap with another D2X token that has the capability to earn that yield that the SPF earn. And then a lot of people will cheer because that's what they want. They want to just put it on a cold wallet and forget about it and just come back and see it in another, however many years. The problem is that on this side of the fence, we have LP and different kinds of exchanges and things like that. And you go and put some in an Orca.so up in an LP and want to forget about it. Well, what happens is you're locking your D2X into a community contract, into a contract with other, tokens and so forth. So where's the yield? Just like airdrops happened in the old days, if you went to Orca and said, well, look, are you going to distribute the yield to our community? And they go, what are you talking about? No. Well, fortunately, this isn't a trail that needs to be blazed. There are already other MSol, GitoSol. There's a couple of others that are out there that fit very nicely into the niche that we're trying to do. And what will end up happening is we have to build a vault, and that vault is a decentralized vault. We don't control it. We don't, direct it or anything like that. You'll just interface with the vault when you put the coins into the LP, and, then you will continue to generate the yield that is owed to you. Anyway, what they're doing right now is this. So right now I'm running this on an Opus model 4.6. And the deal is that it's acting as a coordinator, and it's taking this PRD that we've built, and it's now going out there and it's pulling up a bunch of agents, and it's setting up these agents down here on the bottom, and each agent has its own job. This one's a Rust verifier that will actually go through and evaluate the Rust code that needs to be built. There's going to be a builder at some point down the road that will pick up what these guys are doing right now. And what they're doing right now is they're marking up the code base, and they're saying, okay, this needs to be changed here. This needs to be changed. Here's the line number. And they're setting up the parameters so that a code builder can come in later on and pick it up and just start doing the coding. And what's interesting about this is actually how real software shops work with real humans, right? There's a ceremony where lead engineer and architect and product manager and all the people get together and talk about all of this different stuff and, argue and wrestle and determine, what needs to get done and what needs to happen. And then it's all prepared and packaged up and then handed off to the coders, and then, the coders do the code. One of the problems that we had all the way back to the beginning was, I kept saying 20 2020 on, that we needed to score like $3 to $5 million in a cap raise in order to get the kind of resources that I needed in order to do what we needed to do. Because I knew all along what needed to be done, but I didn't have the personnel and I didn't have the resourcing to get it done. About the max I end up doing up here is maybe 6 to 7 sessions, which means times 2, so probably 10 to 14 of these individual coding sessions are running at any given time, and then I'm just bouncing back and forth, between them, looking and seeing what status is. So this whole process, all the way from start to bottom, is going to end up, 20 individual entities working on it, right? And, to do the amount of work I'm doing, which is across multiple sessions, that's a big shop. We were not going to get this done with 4 or 5 people. Filecoin 2016, $250 million. Storage 2017, $30 million. We've generated a grand total of like $3.5 million over 7 years. Doesn't mean we don't end up bringing a team back on. I keep thinking of the phrase, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. It's kind of weird because with AI, you're kind of doing both. It's really powerful, so that's just the point. Anyway, back to the coin thing. So the D2X will catch yield and we'll have that. And that is what gives it its intrinsic value. That is the piece that will make it valuable to people outside the project looking in and say, well, what is the there? Why is D2X even a thing? What does it matter? It's just a shit coin, just a meme coin. I mean, I've already lost all my money on all those, bought funds. So why do I want to, buy this thing? Well, the answer is because as storage grows on the network, these things just sit and catch passive yield. And it's real yield. It's 15% across the whole 400 million token, supply. You're seeing it happening live. I'm cooking that meal right now. I've already done about 70% of the code behind this. I ran it on DevNet already to see if it works. That's when we hit the wall on this AMM LP type stuff. So that's why I'm doing this work right now. As soon as this work's done, I'll go back to DevNet. After I get done with DevNet, then we will do it for real. That's probably a week to 10 days away. And then after we do it for real, then I will tell you guys, here's a page to go to, which will give you addressing. And then you will determine when you want to swap your coins over for yield producers. You'll then go and you swap them one for one. You'll get the new token 22 yield producers for the ones you currently have. The ones you currently have will get burned, and it'll go like that. If you never swap for the yield producers, have them locked in a wallet somewhere and just don't listen in and don't learn that they have to, swap them. It just sits there waiting for them to return. When they return, they can swap in for the coins. Once they swap in, then the yield will be waiting for them. Okay, so as I talked about, we did make a bunch of changes in console. And depending on what you do with the project, different things will show up in the console, and console is going to get more and more important. And so like if you're a shareholder, you'll have like a cap table and shareholder votes. If you're, a storage provider or a relayer user, you'll have this ability to submit support tickets. These all exist right now. But one of the things that showed up very recently is this affiliate link. And what we said, and by the way, this is part of the reason why the D2X stuff is going on right now, is because this affiliate process was the way that we determined we could legally use the D2X in a way that would actually, pass muster from a regulatory standpoint, while at the same time providing a powerful incentive. Or affiliate dashboard, which allows you to go out and refer people to store storage on the network. And anybody that you refer storage onto the network will automatically capture D2X for you. And all you have to do is give them your referral link, right? You've got a referral link up here. You'll have a listing of referred customers that you've built, and you'll have your commission accrual over time and your commission history. And if we go back and we look at here, what I've done is I've actually asked Claude to tell me a little bit about how the affiliate program works. Maria is a community member with an affiliate code. She shares her link with Dave. Dave signs up. Clock starts when Dave creates his own cost center. In other words, he sets up a relayer and gets a console account. That builds a cost center that flows through. That's how it talks to the network and keeps track of all the sectors that he's uploading to the network and so forth. And then Maria gets a cut of Dave's bill, 20%, months 1 to 3. Months 4 to 6, it drops to 15, months 7 to 9, 10, and then 5. But we are going to do extra bonusing in the first couple periods, right? The first couple of quarters, we're probably going to double this or maybe even triple it. This is sound regulatory. Why? Because what you're doing is you're earning these tokens for generating more utility on the network. You're actually doing something productive. You're not getting these tokens because, I'm trying to convince you that they're going to be worth more next year. You're getting these tokens to generate utility and to grow the network and to make the thing that we're building actually succeed. And that's passed all the muster every time it's come up in any of these conversations from a legally thing. The catch is we're starting off with a free tier that's bigger than almost anybody out there, which is 100 gigabytes. So that's the one thing. That 100 gigabytes is not captured into your initial cut. Back in the day when we said, look, we can't maintain a layer 1, that's not a thing going forward. Not really. I mean, if we get big, we can't be running a layer 1, and we're not Ethereum. We're not, Solana. We're not going to have the resources to protect and to defend a layer 1, right? It just doesn't make sense to be running your own blockchain in this world. What does make sense is to, find the right blockchain and then, move to that. And we determined that right blockchain is Solana. Still the right answer. It's still the right choice. Fees are right. The velocity, everything that they've done really skews well to what we're doing. And so it's going to be great for us to move over to Solana for storage. We'll probably keep the SCP mainnet running forever just because it's a great sort of, skunkworks place for us to do stuff. And there's going to be some reasons and things that we can do. But the story there was we had to build a bridge to get to Solana, and to build a bridge, you got a couple of choices. And one of the first choices is you build a centralized bridge. Somebody has to essentially provide an escrow service, right, on the way across. And once you start doing escrow services, that's money transmitter work, that's financial services, it's illegal. So what you have to do is you got to build a decentralized bridge. And we started looking at decentralized bridges, and the work to accomplish it on a straight back and forth two-way was pretty significant. Now, the devs will tell you, oh, no, we gave you a good pathway to do it that was cheap, and you just refused. And, we can argue about that. I don't really care. That we ended up with was a one-way decentralized bridge called the transporter, and you can send your coins across. And the problem with that, of course, is that SCP went over, and back when SCP still maintained a little bit of value before crypto winter set in, the disparity got crazy because you couldn't come back. There was no arbitrage. So what we have to do is we've got to build that arbin for SCP. Only SCP. No reason to build the arbin for D2X. D2X captures 15%, just like SPF. There's no reason. We have to build a process to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to use a new technology, or a newer technology, called Adaptor signature swaps. And Adaptor signature swaps are essentially scriptless scripts, right? They're this device where essentially Bob can put up his tokens and say, look, I'd like to sell these for the other side. And then Alice comes in and says, okay, I'd like to buy those. And what happens is each side of the contract looks at the other side of the contract and fills in the missing pieces of it. in order to do it. The two parties sort of join together to create a whole contract. The beauty of this is there's no hard fork, right? We can pull this off. I'll have a test net up running for this in about 10 days. And probably within about 30 days, we'll have the ability for people to do that. The downside with that or HTLC, even if we did it the other way, there's no way that the 20 million or however many million SCP have already transferred over can just turn around and come back. That's never going to happen. What has to happen is somebody on the other side has to want to buy the Solana coins in order for them to go back and forth. We'll figure out ways to arrange that for a while, and then what I think will happen is the market will solve itself once we get the ability to do it. So adapter swaps, if you want to look them up, kind of see what they're all about, that's what's going to happen. They have more privacy than HTLCs. They can use both Schnorr or ECDSA. Where ECDSA's main goal is to provide ARB until storage materializes on Solana. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I haven't focused too much on the RelayerXM. I just haven't. Everything has been focused on the Relayer because that's the product. That is the storage product. And so all the focus has been there. The good news about that is the RelayerXM, half of it is the Relayer. So that part's done. The next part is the Examiner part, and that part's actually mostly done. I have a harness already built for it. The problem that I have right now is that I haven't just dived in and just pushed out this update to all, 1,000 Examiners that are out there, is that, I can't risk bringing down the network. But we still have 20 some petabytes of capacity, which is a lot and a good amount to sell to real customers. Somebody shows up and says, well, look, I mean, is this thing real? Is there actual capacity? 22 petabytes of capacity is still enough to attract real users onto the network. The amount of actual stored data on the network is also dropping for various reasons. I'm dropping some of the stuff that's on there, as well as people that are leaving the network are taking down essentially durability, which is causing some of that early test data that we uploaded to not be, it can't be re-uploaded, so it's not repairing itself. And ultimately that's causing this part of it, which is causing this, because what's happening as people start to earn less, then they leave the network. And there's a weird thing going on right now, by the way, where I think back in the day in 2021, 22, when we were buying, hundreds of Exos 16 terabyte drives, 250, I guess, was probably the average price that we were paying for those Exos drives. They got a 5-year warranty. If you go on eBay right now and you pull up and look at an Exos 16 terabyte drive from that era, from that time frame, they're selling for as high as like $400. And that's the same thing that happened with GPUs, by the way, back when, crypto was really driving GPU. You could have had a GPU that you were running for like 2 years with hard gaming on it and just really cranking. And then all of a sudden you could sell it for more than you bought it for 2 years later. And that's just a crazy thing. So I'm sure that some of this is actually people who have sold off the drives on their units just in order to get, some pretty good, money back on that original purchase. And, God bless them. It is what it is. The good news is that they can always buy new drives and plug them in when things turn and we start going back the other direction. And, I'm just looking forward to when we get to that place. So that's the situation there with that. The RelayerXM. So what'll end up happening is that we'll start by pushing out a new version of the SPD. That's already done. It's canned. I need to do testing on it. Once I get the testing done, then we'll push it. And then there has to be this, cadencing where we're rolling out 50 at a time, see how they work, 50 at a time, see how they work. The problem that I cannot have happen is the problem we had last year where the dev rolled out this update and it just really didn't work. And everybody had problems. Even to this day right now, people log in and say, I can't log into my Examiner, and it's just not a clean situation. So we'll clean all that up. It's coming, and then you'll get the new relayer on there and you'll get everything. And I'm expecting that to happen 1 to 2 months, maybe. So this is how I end up becoming like multiple people. So what I'm going to do right here is show you how this sort of works. So I'll take my terminal, and right now I have this one here, which is right here. I've just built another one. I'm going to double it up. I built another one. I'm going to double it up. So now what I'm doing is I'm firing up new sessions. So I start up here, and what epics are is they're little coding stories. There's little bundles, they're modules, they're little self-contained things where a coding team can go to work. I'm going to go ahead and start that off with scoping. So what I've just done is essentially put 15, engineers to work, right? And that'll just run. And this harness has gone through a ton of changes over the last 6 months, but it actually works really well now. I mean, it's clean. I trust it. I can work right through it. It surfaces problems. It doesn't always surface them quickly, but it does surface the problems. And then if there's a problem, we know we need to go back. We very seldom now actually see anything really bad make it all the way through to production code. It just goes. And that's one of the things that the hard learning experiences that we've come across here and actually building all this stuff out. Okay, last thing I want to cover is just talk a little bit about the relayer, and I won't go too far on this because I've talked a lot about it, but if you're not convinced right now yet in any of all this, if you're still kind of looking and saying, yeah, well, I don't know if this is ever coming back or whatever, this is the new relayer. And it does look similar in some ways to the old relayer, but I got to tell you, this is a complete rework of a lot of the tooling that's there. The beauty of this is this is the live map, right? So when you come in and you want to rent storage, the first thing you see is you see the map. You know this is the network you're going to be renting storage on. This is all of the stuff that's out there. Once you've set up your own virtual private data center, in other words, once you've generated all of the providers you're going to use, then you can tell it just showed my VPD, and then it'll just show you the ones that you've chosen. In my case, I've chosen both sides of the pond, but you can choose just Europe or you can choose just, United States. Unfortunately, this is the two major areas. Down in Asia, there's a few, not much. We need to get more providers as we go forward, and we will as we kind of grind this out. But this was my original vision, right? That this is the network, and you are the network operator. So the very first page you get is the network operations center, where you can actually see, what the network looks like and so forth. And so when it comes time to actually, build that, you can go in here and you can say, give me the virtual private data center builder. And then that's what all of this is. You can say, give me a very high durability, or give me a high availability, or choose a distance, or choose certain compliance by choosing countries. You can actually specify individual by pinning individual providers. So if you have your own 5 that are scattered around, they can't be in your own domicile on your own network. But if you're outside of your network, you can actually choose all of the providers and always pin them so they're in there. So that's a big thing. We've added a whole bunch of new things to this cell editing, which is essentially the parameters you choose for different kinds of things like durability and availability. This weighted builder, though, is really a powerful tool. And the beauty of the weighted builder is it's stuff that an AI really will naturally take to. So for us, the next step beyond that is to drive AI into this process so that you're not actually picking and choosing yourself. You just give it a, text-based, natural language command. I want everything stored in the EU. I want the providers to be really, reliable. I want them to be very performant. And then it will go out and it will figure out sort of a thing for you, and it will bring back that set and actually put it in place and save your virtual provider set for you. So that's a really powerful deal. That was one of the things that I really wanted to focus on. I still have more things that I'm working on for this, but it's now starting to shape up and look a lot more like I originally envisioned it.
This is the power and the heart of the whole product that we build. This is the thing that really shows you that you're building a private data center yourself. Then we get down into all the S3 stuff, and there's just a ton of it. When you get in here into the file manager and you start working on uploading stuff, the capabilities that are available to you now from the S3 standpoint are broad and deep. Cores, object lock, versioning, life cycling, encryption. There's all kinds of stuff in here that just didn't exist under the Minio tag. Even under the Minio, the stuff that was there were a bunch of things that Minio served up that just didn't work. And that left it being nothing more than just a simple S3 gateway. And if your tooling like VM worked with that, well, okay, great. But if it didn't, you found a lot of bugs. And so, you found a lot of things that just didn't work very well with our cloud. Now we have all of this stuff that actually does work. Not saying none of it's, has bugs or anything. I'm sure that as people start really using it more and more, we're going to run into bugs. We've got a truly working IAM now. We didn't have that with MinIO. They had an IAM, but it didn't work. It didn't actually apply any policies or anything to the individual stuff. It was just it was a fugazi. I mean, it just really wasn't a thing. Now you have it. You can create that. You can use that tenancy to actually apply to different cost centers. Now certs are something that we will effectuate for you. If you just say, look, here's my domain, go out and get me a Let's Encrypt cert, and then you keep track of it. I don't want to have to update it every 90 days. You do that, and the relayer will actually do it for you. We have full audit logs now with the ability to output events that are going on with S3. We have the ability to set up the access paths once you set up the certs and so forth. So, once you can have a domain to point to for a bucket or an object or whatever, we have that ability. Webhooks are in there. This Cloud Sync is the ability to essentially do something that I'm going to be putting a lot of energy into going forward. I always had this vision that the cache, where things stop before they get uploaded to the network in the erasure coded segments, I always had this idea that there needed to be lanes, persistent cache, priority cache, uh, different kinds of uh, strategies to use the cache for different things. So why might you use a persistent cache? Well, maybe what you want is you want to set up part of the cache where the stuff does get uploaded to the network, but you use it so frequently that you don't want to be pulling it down from the network. You want to be pulling it from a local copy. So the persistent cache, right now what happens with cache is it's FIFO, first in, first out, and it's always essentially garbage collecting once you hit the top of the size that you've dedicated for the cache. But the deal with persistent cache is that you will tell things, I don't ever want that to leave the cache. That needs to always stay there, or it needs to stay there on a life cycle and then upload after 90 days. Persistent cache, priority cache. So maybe you have a division or department that has to get things uploaded to the network like that, and other things can go slower. So anything that's in the priority cache lane just zooms right past everything that's in the other lanes and so forth. So the cache is a very powerful thing that we can extrapolate out on, and that's something I'll be putting a lot of time and energy into going forward. Configure has some of these things built into it. So in this case, you have your cost center, you have the various access keys and your secret key for your S3 capability. You can rotate your credentials now. The services, you have the original things we had for starting and turning on and restarting the servers that are running underneath. But you have this ability now for the advanced capabilities that were always there, but nobody knew what they did or how to use them. What I've been doing is I've been running AI over different setups and different kinds of testing. And as we get the AI to deliver essentially a persona or a set what it does is it comes back and it returns one of these, and then we plug it in under these presets. And by the time this is done, we'll probably have 7 or 8 in here that you can choose from that will set all these really weird arcane little settings into a very specific configuration for you so that you get the most ideal configuration of your relayer. Then we have this whole monitoring thing. This is all real live logging. This is all built to go out to Loki, ScPrime compatibility. It's all built for IT admins. It's built to monitor your system, but it's also built to feed into Grafana and to other kinds of auditing tools so that you can put the relayer on your network and have it fit right in. And it covers all of the sections of the relayer. And then, of course, we talked about tenant management, multi-tenant capabilities, and so forth. So that's all in there. I'm going to do my best to try and get people using it. It's really fun to use, and it's really powerful, and it really works now, and it's really, compatible with software. Where we're at, I still have a long ways to go on this. I thought I'd go further than I did go. I told you the next thing I'm going to be working on is performance testing. And performance testing is interesting because we've got a big network, but it's not huge and it's not as big as it was. So the performance won't be up to where it can be. When we get to a place where we have 10,000 providers and they're really, close and far and wherever and all over the globe, then provider testing and performance testing will become even more important and valuable. But I think we're going to get some good stuff out of it right now. I'm going to be doing 4 layers of performance testing. And now what we have is we have this performance testing set up, and I can just turn a bunch of clods loose on it. I've got a RelayerXM sitting here on the shelf. It's hooked up to a 10G connection. It's powerful enough to set all the way up from 10G down to 30 megabyte or megabit, and just really stress the network and come back and tell us what we have. And so just like if we go on to the website, just like we built this page right here, S3 compatible tested against the field. Here's the Ceph numbers I was talking about. I guess we're a little lower on that 1042. We're 50% of the 1042, but we're 83% against the group that we believe to be important, which are the 453 tests. If you go down through here and you look at everything, what I've done is I've built a compatibility here to test against the the other people, and we're really good. And there's very few things here that we don't do that other people do. Well, that'll be the same thing with performance testing. I'm going to build one of these for performance testing. And with performance testing, what you do is you run Warp. Warp's a Minio tool that they built to actually get out there. How fast is it, period? Warp hammers the gateway with plain S3 traffic, read, write, mix, stat, delete, list, crossed a bunch of different object sizes. There's a tool for it, and now I can put an agent on it, and I can just do it and get it done. I can do a bunch of different kinds of this performance testing. So that's coming next. This is something that I can set up and run, and it doesn't really take a lot of my time because once I get it actually working, it just happens in the background, and I'm not really paying much attention to it. So that's really the situation there with that. These are doing the scoping right now. You can see this one has 3 different engineers working. There's a QA engineer. There's a product DA. This is really one of the powers of AI. DA is a devil's advocate. It's somebody who's angry and against things, always finding the problems. That's really important to run DAs, because what DAs do is they find the holes. If you just turned it all over to AI and told the AI to do a good job, it always wants to find the happy path. It wants to find the stuff that works, and it will do whatever it takes to find the stuff that works. But what it won't do is it won't surface the edge cases, the problems, the things that break. So you have to put these DAs in there, and once you put the DAs in there, then they come back in and do whatever. The way SPF was designed is it works like this. It works on this protocol called renter host. Renter is the relayer, host is you. And what happens is the relayer doesn't actually form a contract with you. That's where we diverge from the SIA folks. There is a thing called conductor, and conductor forms contracts with everybody on the network, and the relayers all talk to Conductor and get the ability to upload sectors through via Conductor track. And then what happens is that Conductor, when it's actually making contracts with the providers, it has to actually do what's called an allowance. So what it does is it says, hey, I'd like to, book maybe 500 gigs of storage on your unit. I don't know how much of that I'm going to use this month, but I'll go ahead and commit to allowance of 500 gigs worth. And so it sets that up, and then 500 gigs is denominated in SCP, and then that amount is actually pushed into the contract. On the other side is your side. You put up a commensurate amount and more, because you might be saying, well, I have 64 terabytes to offer, but of course there's not, call for that right now. So you don't need to collateralize 64 terabytes. You only need to collateralize typically the amount that actually is being contracted. And like I just said, let's say that amount is for right now for 500 gigabytes. What ends up happening is you have to collateralize that. So you put up an equal amount of that allowance. And in the case, I think we might be doing 1.5 times or whatever. Those are summed, and that sum actually then has 15% applied to it. That 15% is paid out of my pocket, right, out of the Conductor. And that actually is what gets pushed off into the D2X. When I say that 500 gig, what I'm talking about is new contract renewals, but you might have like a terabyte of already stored data on the network, and you're already contracted with us for that terabyte, right? That gets renewed every month. And every month, Conductor jams a terabyte's worth of SCP into the deal to cover allowance for that 1 terabyte. And again, 15% of that times 2, your side and ours, is pulled out and jammed into the SPF D2X ecosystem. This is what the Examiner is looking like right now. It still needs some help. You can get to this right now, obviously. You can still get to the Examiner as it was. There's still a few things in here that I want to pull over that I don't have in the new thing. But there's some things in here that don't exist in the old Examiner. So the wallet now is more of the web wallet. It actually has the ability for you to set a pin, a transaction pin. So now you don't have to worry about leaving this thing live on a local network and having somebody come in, kid come in and actually take off all of the SCP that's on there. That's baked in there. That works now. The transporter is also here inside the Examiner now, like Solana walleting and so forth that are going to be baked in, not quite set up yet. I guess actually this is set up and is working. Staking will be leaving, of course. So that's that. And then folders, of course, and this is the thing to set up the drives. It's close. I could probably ship this in less than a week if I really put a bunch of energy into it, but it's really more the process of making sure that it ships and doesn't tear down the network when it ships. The thing I heard recently was I heard Elon talking about power walls for storage. Seriously. What Elon was talking about was everything that we're doing, right? But Elon's a trillionaire, right? So he's going to be able to come in and build a power wall, put in, whatever, 100 drives and, really roll this out. I'm not having any illusions here. If we don't get this done in the next 1 to 2 years and roll it out and get a big market segment captured, then what's going to happen is we're going to get bypassed quickly by the Silicon Valley elite, right? What we need to do is we need to grow storage rapidly in the next year, right? If we can grow storage rapidly in the next year and show that we have a working model and a working platform and a working network, then what will happen is they're all about buying over them rather than building. So that's how we end up going from here to 1000x. They come in and, we make a deal and, that's the situation. I'd rather, sell this all off to Elon than watch it go by the wayside. So, there's no doubt that we're going to be looking and chasing that sort of thing. but we'll have to be on Solana, yes, and we'll have to, have show some scale, and we'll have to show that we really do work and that we really do meet all of the S3 requirements and all of that sort of stuff. So we have these storage plans. One of the things that I built was called storage credits. And storage credits work in such a way that you can actually buy storage on the network to support the network, support us. And essentially you can buy a certain amount of storage and you don't have to use it like in 12 months, right? You can hold on to it for 2 years. And if it turns out that you don't use it in that first 12 months or whatever, you can turn around and sell the storage credits to somebody else who does need it. So if you do want to support the project, getting something real out of it, you could probably get a tax write-off on it, and you get this big chunk of D2X at the same time that come along with it. This is already better than the $5 a terabyte. I don't know what it is, like $4 something. This is below that, even further below that. And like I said, it's not like it expires in 12 months, so you don't have to actually use it. And if you, do put this money into the project and then, 9 months goes by and you say, well, I'm never going to use this storage. By that time, storage ought to be pretty wild and woolly with us. And you could say, well, look, I'll just sell a bunch of this off at, $4 or $5 a terabyte and see if I can, get some of that money back. And community storage packages are a thing. But other than that, no more questions. All right, guys, appreciate the small community that's shown up, but it'll grow as we get forward. And things are looking good. You just gotta